Hi friends, it's Aubrey. In today's video, I am showing you my pantry cooking that I've been doing over the last few weeks. It is September and Jordan Page does Shelftember. I'm not 100% doing Shelftember, but am trying to do some more pantry cooking this month, so I wanted to take you along on that journey. There will be some dinners and desserts, so if that interests you, keep watching. The first dinner that I made for my family, just using things that I already had around my kitchen, were these sheet pan nachos. They're such an easy thing to throw together, especially on those really busy nights. And so I had some chips, cheese, some ground beef that I seasoned and heated up a little bit in the microwave so that the seasoning would spread throughout the meat evenly. And then I also had some beans in my freezer that I had thawing out on the counter during the day, and I added all of these things onto a sheet pan, and I did spray the pan before just to make sure that nothing stuck, and then baked this in the oven at 350 degrees, and I do it for about 3 to 5 minutes, and I just keep a really close eye on it just to make sure nothing burns. And then we had some guacamole and some salsa that we needed to use as well, so go ahead and throw any of your favorite toppings on there, and this is a really super quick and delicious dinner. I know I've showed these on my channel before, but they are my favorite teriyaki meatballs, and we pretty much always have the ingredients on hand because we love them that much. So it's a recipe from letsdishrecipes.com that I alter just a little bit, but I'll go ahead and have this recipe linked down below for you. I do mine in the Instant Pot, but you definitely can do the slow cooker as well, whatever works best for you. But what you'll need is 2 dozen pre-cooked frozen meatballs, a fourth cup of soy sauce, a half cup of pineapple juice, a third cup of beef broth, a third cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 to 2 cloves of minced garlic, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, and then a teaspoon of sesame oil and a tablespoon of cornstarch. So you'll mix all of those sauce ingredients together and pour them over your meatballs in your Instant Pot or slow cooker. I cook it on manual pressure for 3 minutes in my Instant Pot, and then once it's safe to open up the lid after the pressure has released, I go ahead and turn it on the saute function just for a few minutes to get the sauce to thicken up. And then we like to serve this over rice with some broccoli or any other kind of veggie that you like. And honestly, this is my go-to quick and easy dinner. Hopefully, you guys like this just as much as we do. So I haven't made these in such a long time, but there is something about homemade chicken strips that are just so much better than the ones you get at the store, either in the freezer section or if you're going out to eat. Anyways, we had all the ingredients to make some homemade chicken strips, and we had some random things from a meal box kit that needed to get used too. So I thought this would be a perfect way to use some things up. And so first I cut my chicken into strips. I got my breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese in a bowl, mixed that together, and then I also got my flour mixture, which was just flour, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, salt, and pepper. I'll go ahead and have a recipe that I like linked down below for you so you can reference that if you don't like eyeballing things like I do. And then I also got an egg cracked and in another bowl, and then I set up my station for breading the chicken strips. I first dunk all of the chicken in the flour mixture and give it a really good shake. And then I take a piece of chicken out just one at a time, put it in the egg wash and then into the breadcrumbs and cheese mixture. And then I put it onto a sprayed cookie sheet. And I don't like adding parchment paper or foil. I find it to not help it crisp up as much. So I just put it straight on the cookie sheet and then into the oven. And I put this in there at 400 degrees. The recipe that I'll have linked for you says to cook it for 30 to 40 minutes, but honestly, that's way too much. I normally cook mine for about 15 to 20, and I just temp them to make sure that they are at 165 degrees internally so that they're safe to eat. And then we served this with some tater tots and corn, and everybody enjoyed this dinner so much. For this next night, I just really wasn't feeling like cooking anything. And I remembered that I had some chili from the crockpot video I did a few weeks ago. I'll go ahead and have that linked here for you. but we made this on one of those nights for that video, and I remember that I put some in the freezer, and so I decided to pull it out. I heated it up a little bit with some warm water, just enough so I was able to dump it in my pan, and then I slowly heated it up on low heat, covered until it was at the point where we could eat it, and it was a safe, delicious temperature. And this chili, if you have not tried it yet and you haven't watched that video, definitely go watch it and try out this chili. My husband said this is the best chili I have ever made, and I definitely agree. I will be making a double batch next time, so we have lots more in the freezer to pick from in the future. For this next dinner, we are going to make my favorite soup of all time, chicken and wild rice. I had just enough of my wild rice blend left and then all the other veggies and ingredients to make this soup, so I went ahead, started to put everything into my crock pot. So you'll need about a pound of chicken breast or chicken thighs, whatever you prefer, and then a cup of carrots and a cup of onion. I used my little Ninja food processor to blend that up into smaller pieces. I'll go ahead and have that link down below for you guys. It's one of my favorite kitchen tools. And then about 3/4 cup of celery is what you'll need next. And then for the spices, you will need 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, a teaspoon and a half of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, and 1 to 2 bay leaves. And then you'll need to add in 4 to 5 cloves of minced garlic. And then you can either use a broth-based powder like I did or chicken broth, but you'll need 6 cups of chicken broth and 2 cups of water. You'll stir all of this together and also add in your rice. I used a wild rice mix. You can just use wild rice or regular rice, really up to you on what you want to do. You just need a cup of rice total. I let mine cook on low for about 7 to 8 hours, and then during the last hour of cooking, what you'll do is you'll pull the chicken out, and then you'll add in your milk and cornstarch slurry. So we did 2 cups of milk and then 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, mixed that together, and then dumped it in. My husband helped with this part since I was out of the house at this point, so thank you, Brandon, for helping me with this. And then you'll shred up the chicken, put it back in, and let this thicken up. And this one got a little more thick than normal. I think we accidentally added in a little too much cornstarch, but it should turn out just fine for you. This is one of my favorite soups. It makes a lot and totally feeds a crowd, so definitely have some family or friends come over, or if you have a big family, this will be a great dinner for you. You can serve it with some crusty bread or just have it as is, but this is what it looks like when it's all done. Like I said, ours did get a little thick, but it was delicious. I had a ton of milk that I needed to get used before it went bad, so the next couple of recipes you'll notice that they all use milk, and the previous one I was really just trying to use it up without it going bad. So I made some crockpot chicken Alfredo, and I still wanted to include this here, but it did not turn out how I thought it would, and I definitely won't be making it this way again, but just wanted to throw it in there, just letting you know that not every dinner works out how you think it will. And that's okay. Sometimes it's a weird experiment. It was still edible, it just wasn't our favorite. But for this recipe, I'll have it linked down below if you want to try and alter it or use the recipe and not do it as a crock pot version. But what you'll need is some chicken breast. You're going to go ahead and brown that on both sides in a little bit of oil with some salt and pepper. And then you'll put it into your crock pot and you'll mix together some whole milk and chicken broth and garlic and pour that over the chicken. And you'll need about a cup and a half of the whole milk, a cup and a half of the chicken broth, and then about 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. You can cook it on high for about 2 to 3 hours, but I cooked it on low for about 4 to 5 hours. And then I removed the chicken and added in some noodles. It says to use fettuccine, but I used spaghetti because that's what I had on hand. And it was about 8 ounces of pasta. And then I covered this and cooked it on high for about 30 minutes. And then once the noodles steamed like they were cooked, then I added in some heavy cream and Parmesan cheese. So it was a half cup of heavy cream and a cup of Parmesan cheese and stirred that together. I sliced up the chicken and put it back in, and it just did not thicken up. This is where it got weird. I kind of wish I would have done it in my Instant Pot and I could have turned it on the saute function, and maybe that would have helped thicken everything up and make it a little bit more creamy. So it really did not work as intended, and we decided we don't like the texture of pasta when it's cooked in the crock pot versus on the stove. So like I said, we won't be making this one again, but it was a good practice of trying to use what we had on hand and make a recipe work, and sometimes they just don't, and that's okay. I had a ton of ground beef in my freezer, so I've been stocking up when it's on sale because the regular price of ground beef is just astronomical right now. And I cooked up the full pound of ground beef using my meat masher, which, if you don't already have one, they are a lifesaver, game changer product when you're cooking any ground meat. So I'll go ahead and have this one linked down below for you. I season my meat with onion powder, garlic powder, salt, pepper, and Worcestershire sauce. And then we decided to have some spaghetti. We used rotini pasta and just the jarred sauce that we got from the store. And I like to add a little bit of onion powder, garlic powder, and Italian seasoning, and sometimes a little pepper or salt, depending on your taste preferences, just to kind of spice up the regular old pasta sauce you can get at the store. Then we served this up and added a little bit of Parmesan cheese that we had, and it was delicious. For my next recipe using milk, I decided to make a chocolate lush. At least that's what my mom called it. And I don't know if that's the actual term. I kind of just made this up and it was resembling my mom's chocolate lush. So I made some pudding according to the package instructions. I used the chocolate instant pudding and then let that set up. And while that was setting up, I used some Oreo cookies. I think I had about 24 of these left from the package. I put those into my food processor with a half cup or one stick of melted butter and mixed that all together to get a nice crumb. And then I pulled out a 9 by 13 baking dish. You can definitely put this in a pie tin or a smaller baking dish if you want it to be thicker. I was trying to feed a lot of people with this since we had some family coming over. And so I just did a 9 by 13, layered down the cookie crumbs, and then I put in my chocolate pudding and then the whipped topping, and I had some chocolate chips that needed to get used, so I threw those on top, and this was a hit. I will definitely be making it again in the future, and it was an easy no-bake recipe. This is one of my absolute favorite casseroles of all time. My husband and I are obsessed with this. We like having it at least once or twice a month because it's just that good. But this is a pork and potato casserole. I will have the recipe that I loosely follow down below for you. And what you'll need is about 4 cups of potatoes. You'll need them cut pretty thin. So if you have a mandolin, use that. I used my food processor to get them pretty thin. And then you'll go ahead and boil these in some salted water. And while those are boiling, if you haven't already cooked your ground pork, you'll do that. Mine, I had it already in the freezer and just let that thaw out. Once your pork is cooked, you'll go ahead and start cooking your sauce. So in a saucepan, you'll add 3 tablespoons of butter and about a cup of thin sliced onions. You'll get that cooking together for a few minutes, and then you'll add in a 4th cup of flour. You'll stir this around for about another minute, and then you'll add in a cup of milk. And then you can add extra seasonings here. I added some Italian seasoning, onion powder, garlic powder, salt, and pepper. I let this get a little bit thick, and then I added in about a cup of shredded cheddar cheese to this and let that continue to get really nice and thick. And then you'll want to add in 1 cup of the starchy potato water. Then I added in my meat and my potatoes and stirred this mixture around. I used a really large saucepan to make sure that everything could get covered without spilling out. And then I added all of this to a sprayed 9 by 13 baking dish. And then you'll top it with any additional cheese that you want. And you'll go ahead and cover this and bake it in the oven at 375 degrees for about 30 minutes, and then you'll cook it for an additional 10 minutes with the aluminum foil off. That way it can get nice and crispy. We normally just have it as is, but you could definitely do a veggie side or some nice crusty bread, but this is a big hit in our household and I hope you like it too. While I was making the previous dinner, I also prepped all the ingredients and baked a sheet pan sausage and veggie meal that we like so much. This one is really easy. You can take whatever vegetables you have and any kind of sausage, chop it up, throw it onto a greased cookie sheet, and season it with salt, pepper, and whatever other seasonings you like, and bake it in the oven at 400 for about 20 to 25 minutes. Tastes great, and it's really easy cleanup, which are two things that I love finding in a recipe. I had a ton of cream cheese that needed to get used, so I looked up on the internet some different ways you can use cream cheese, and I found this awesome brownie recipe. So it's cheesecake brownies, and all you'll need is a package of brownie mix, 1 8-ounce thing of cream cheese, an egg, and sugar, and then the ingredients to go along with making the brownie batter. You'll make the brownie mix according to the package instructions, and I had a little helper with mine. And then you'll go ahead and put that into a greased 9 by 13 baking dish, and then you'll start working on the cream cheese toppings. So you'll need an 8-ounce thing of softened cream cheese, 1 egg, and then a 1/3 cup of granulated sugar. You'll mix this all together and then spread it on top of the brownie mix. And then you can do some swirls if you want to get fancy. I didn't really get that fancy, but you can use a toothpick to do those or a fork. Really up to you on if you want to do that or not. And my little helper helped me clean up the kitchen while we were waiting for the brownies to be done. And these were amazing. I honestly don't think I'll be able to have just regular brownies ever again because these were so good. So I definitely suggest that you try these out. For this last recipe, I'll be showing you my Instant Pot potato soup. If you've been on my channel or watched my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that this is another one of my favorite soup recipes, and I have made it in previous videos. It's just a really fast soup, especially using the Instant Pot. And so what you'll need is about 4 to 5 medium-sized golden potatoes. You can use russets or red. I just prefer the texture of the golden potatoes best. You'll wash and dice those, and then you'll also get your celery diced. I freeze my celery just to make it easier for me. So I buy a big bunch, chop it all up, wash it, all that good stuff, put it in a freezer bag, and then pull it out when I need it. And then I also chopped up some carrots in my little food processor again, just to make my life a lot easier. And you saw me adding in the chicken broth. You'll need about 3 cups of that. You can use regular chicken broth or the bouillon powder like I use. And then you'll go ahead and add in a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, a tablespoon of parsley, about a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, and then you'll eyeball the salt and pepper. And then I also add in about 3 cloves of minced garlic. I stir this, and while I'm cutting my vegetables, I'll have this on saute so that way it heats up and it helps the Instant Pot get to pressure a little bit quicker. You'll add all the vegetables in there and give everything a good stir to make sure that the seasoning gets over all of the ingredients. And then you'll put your Instant Pot lid on, make sure that it is set to sealing, and you will cook this on manual pressure for about 3 minutes. And while that was cooking, I decided to make some breadsticks. So I got those in my air fryer for a few minutes, and then I brushed those with some butter and garlic powder. And then I had some kielbasa sausage, and I decided instead of putting it in my Instant Pot like I do a lot of the time with other meats that I'll put in this soup, that I would just go ahead and brown it on the stove and then add it in after everything else was added into the soup and the soup was fully cooked. To make this soup nice and creamy, you can either use whole milk or whipping cream. I didn't have any whipping cream, even though that is my preferred choice for this, but you'll need a cup of whole milk or a cup of whipping cream and then 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. You'll mix that together in a slurry, and when it's safe to open up your Instant Pot lid, you'll go ahead and dump that in, turn the Instant Pot on to saute for a few minutes, and stir everything until it starts to get a little bit thick. And once that was to where I wanted it, I added in my kielbasa sausage, and we served this with the breadsticks, and this just hit the spot. We love this soup so much, and we'll be making it a lot more this fall. That's all I have for you guys today. I love doing pantry cooking videos, so if you like them too, definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future pantry cooking videos and other fun things that I do here on my channel. If you could leave me a comment down below with some of your pantry cooking ideas that you have, and I hope you have the best rest of your day. Bye!